Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Those that are new, that are just joining, thank you so much. Today we are going to discuss effective communication, but again, it's gonna go where it's gonna go. I have the lovely Katie and Bree with me. We're each gonna give our insights, but first I do wanna start with introductions. I'm going to hand the mic over to Katie. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody out there in the world. My name's Katie. I am a Reiki and Aquarian Fire Master teacher, and I do lots of other healing energy modalities. But I have all my contact information below. I'm here to raise the vibration of anybody willing to raise their vibration and to help in the aid of our ascension process and just enlightenment in general. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I read tarot cards too. Pretty much people know what the deal is with me. My contact information's on there, so if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Katie. And I believe I did put your contact information down there. I'll double check and make sure that it is available. Bree, you're next.
Hello. Hi, guys. My name is Bree, and I am actually getting started in my own sort of spiritual consulting, not just spiritual, but like light worker consulting, I guess is a better term for it. I want to help people get up and running in their own personal endeavors, whether it is for, healing work that you're doing, or, readings like psychic readings, tarot card readings. If you're doing any sort of anything and you need help with like a website getting up and running on like getting events rolled out and like needing hosts, or any sort of like just getting things in place so that you can start to be an entrepreneur for yourself and start to help people. I want to help people help more people. So that's kind of my jam that I'm getting rolling, and I have clients, and I'm definitely looking for more clients. I want to be able to help light workers specifically, and whatever you want to consider light workers, because lots of terms you can use for that. So my email address is ConsciousCreality@gmail.com. Adey is going to put it in the description, and that's Creality, like C, reality, Creality. Create your own reality. And I'm going to be doing other stuff with that as well, like light language and other exciting things. So that's getting up and running, and I'll have a website and support as well. So thank you, Adey, for this little space to kind of announce myself, because I'm super stoked about doing this and helping people. And I can't wait to see, everybody's own launch pads and kind of just skyrocketing off into their own little ways. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Bree. And I will say Bree has helped me with my Facebook page, certain things with setting up a YouTube webinar, and she is quite good at what she does. And so, yeah, please feel free to contact Bree for consulting work. I believe that's what it is, right? So getting to the topic of communication, effective communication. This is something that I'm still learning about. What I will talk about is from my experience, what I've noticed has worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. And this is how we learn, right? We learn from our experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so one major thing I want to mention, and I believe this is more of like the umbrella term of effective communication, is being present. When you are either in a group setting or having a one-on-one, whatever type of conversation it is, whether it is an emotional one, professional one, whatever it is, being present is so, so, so important. Not only does it tell the other person that you care and that you're listening to what they're saying, It also helps you understand whatever it is that you're talking about, whatever the issue is. If you're trying to resolve an issue, whether it's conflict resolution or you're trying to speak your mind, it's also important to allow the other person to speak their piece and for you to actually listen to what they're saying. And I feel like a lot of the times when we walk away from discussions and conversations in a negative way, in pain or hurt, or just sad, I feel like most of the times that happens because we're not present. We are totally responding with our emotions, or I should say reacting with our emotions, and we're viewing the other person's point of view from our point of view. We're not totally present, and so we're not taking in what they're saying. We're not looking at their intentions. We're only viewing it from our own point of view, and that can cause a lot of miscommunication and a lot of hurt feelings, and it doesn't totally have to be that way. So being present also means bringing awareness to your ego. When you feel like your emotions are rising, you know, you get triggered. We all have triggers, especially when we're going, when we're having these emotional talks and conversations. We get triggered, it happens. Bring awareness to it and give yourself time to respond. And if you feel like you are too into your emotions, it's okay to end that conversation before things go out of hand and continue it another day. You know what I mean? And if this is in a professional setting and you're completely not agreeing with whatever the other party is saying, sometimes we can't take constructive criticism and our emotions do come up. It's important to have that in check. I'm not suggesting that we suppress our emotions, but there are ways we can channel these emotions in a very positive light. And there are steps that we can take to make sure that we are not misunderstanding what's being communicated to us, or we're not misunderstanding the person's intentions. So yeah, for now, I think I'll leave it at that. I'm sure one of you have something to add to this, so I will toss the mic.
So yeah, communication is something that is obviously extremely important because we're all here to connect. We're all here for connection. And so being able to properly connect with people is something that clear communication can help you do. For me, I know that I used to be a horrible communicator. I would interrupt people. It was the 24/7 Katie show. And I was always waiting for the next thing that I could say. I wasn't really being present, wasn't really even listening. And, you know, it's funny how the universe or how source can bring certain examples or certain people into your life to show you different reflections that you need to see about yourself in order to help you grow and move on to other points. And for me, I was sent a guy that I dated for a while, and I used to always interrupt him, and he would be like in the middle of trying to say something, and he would just like look at me, and he made a huge deal about it and would be like, oh, fine, no, obviously what you have to say is really important. And like, would go from there, and I'd say, no, tell me what you're going to say. I'm so sorry. And he'd be like, no, I'm not going to tell you now. And he wouldn't tell me, and it drove me crazy to the point where I literally was able to rewire those neural pathways and be like, okay, I understand that what I have to say is not 100% the most important thing, that, you know, it's important to share too. You know, if it's all about you, then what's your objective? Are you really trying to connect? Are you really trying to hear the other person? And when we care about people in our lives, even if there's somebody that you don't care about as much as you care about other people, it's still important because everybody has valid points. And, you know, I think it's frequent for people to, at least for me, to fall into this egotistical kind of state where you think you just know, and nobody knows everything. No one was given a roadmap. It's important that we work together to, you know, every single person has a different piece of the puzzle. And if you're willing to sit back and listen, then you can actually like start to obtain these other pieces of the puzzle that are things that you didn't have, either an experience or just knowledge, some intuition, guidance, anything. If you're listening, then you can have all these answers come up for you. For me, my God or my source speaks to me through other people. And so when I'm patient enough to actually take the time to listen to other people and really genuinely be present and hear what they have to say, then I'm better for it, because I all of a sudden have more tools to add to my tool belt, and I'm able to, deal with certain problems, listening to someone's experience or listening to someone's inspiration, or just like anything that they've gone through or any knowledge that they have. It really makes it a lot easier. You don't have to make things difficult. And when you're making it constantly about, when I'm making it constantly about myself, I'm making things more difficult for myself. It's like I'm trying to control everything, and it just life doesn't work that way, because we're all connected. So it's important to like utilize those connections with everybody. Also too, for me, a really strong point in when I'm working on communicating with other people, because I still fall into the mode of I get really excited when I want to share something. And I think, it's funny because my mind will go from being present to just being like, oh my gosh, even if I'm not attempting to cut the other person off, or I'm not attempting to offend them in any way. So when I'm taking deep breaths, it really allows me to pause that moment and to bring myself back into awareness. A deep breath is a great way to bring yourself into presence. For me, I'm sure for others, for sure. So yeah, that's what I got for right now. I'm sure Bree has some things to say.
I'm so glad you said that about breathing. That is so huge. And if you really think about it, it's like, your breath, with each breath, you're creating another cycle of your reality. And with how you're breathing, I'm catching myself doing this more and more often, where, if somebody's talking about something that maybe I'm not very comfortable with or something, if I really start to pay attention to myself, I'm like, wait, my breathing is like totally off. Like I'm either shallow breathing or whatever. And just like you're saying, Katie, like taking that moment of just like deep breath and then leveling out your breath and having more of a conscious breath, still being present and listening to them, obviously, but really just kind of resetting yourself, that will be able to legitimately reset the energy, the conversation. I mean, if a conversation is taking a turn in in a direction you do not want to go into, sometimes just doing that reset, doing that breathing actually will let you be able to recenter the energy of the conversation so that you can take it in the way that it really is best for it to go. And I also wanted to mention, when you're talking about like being present and being like a good listener. So this is what I've been finding more and more is, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to make it a point to be present with every single person I talk to today. And, everything that they say is going to just fully just flood my ears and my brain. And it's just going to be great. And I'm going to have direct eye contact. You make all like these goals if this is really something that you're trying to work on or whatever. But if you, for yourself, when you're sitting alone at home, have things that come up in your mind, have thoughts that come up in your mind, have ideas. And if you are ignoring yourself, and if you're shutting down yourself and taking your ideas and being like, oh, or not just ideas, but like thoughts, like, I don't like that thought. No, I'm not going to acknowledge that thought. I'm not going to even, no, that thought does not even exist. No way. That is not in my reality. And you use that sort of an attitude with thoughts, which are just energy. Thoughts are energetic exchange just as much as money is, just as much as, anything. I was actually relating thoughts to water yesterday. When I was talking to a friend, I was like, it's kind of funny because thoughts flow just as much as water does, I would say. And we're always replenishing water. I mean, we're made up of mostly water. It's like what, 70%, 80% water is what our body is made up of. And we have to drink water throughout the day to hydrate and everything. And the water takes all the junk in our system and it flushes out all the toxins and everything. And I feel like I feel like thoughts are just as fluid as water is. And like, there's a constant stream of stuff always coming in. And that depends, I think, on a number of factors, including your own like personal energetic frequency and stuff. And so like thinking about thoughts flowing just as much as water, just as much as money, well, depending on your mentality of money. Poverty mindset might put a dam in that flow. But when you have those thoughts flowing in and everything, like I'm finding that the more that we acknowledge our own thoughts as being just thoughts, just energy, we are tapped into the collective conscious. And, you know, it's like the 100th monkey effect. And you can definitely, you know, Google that and look up the study that was done on the collective consciousness. But that really opened my mind to understanding like we are all connected, we are all one, and especially a species is extremely connected to itself. And there is like this entire, you know, cloud of thoughts, of consciousness, and we're getting things coming in all the time. So I am going to come back to communication with this because obviously thoughts are a part of it. With all of that stuff coming in, we have to just really acknowledge and appreciate everything for what it is. It's all just energy. It's all, you can assign all the energy a number because technically it's all energy is frequency, it's light, it's sound, it's whatever you want to say in quantum physics. It's just coming in. And if you have a thought that comes in and it's not something that you desire or like, that's okay. But if you shut it down and say, no, I am putting my hand up to you, thought, well, then I've been finding, at least for myself, the more that happens, the more we see it reflected in our external in my external reality, where it will be perhaps harder for me to listen to people, or harder for them to listen to me, harder for them to be present, harder for me to be present. Because for myself, I'm shutting down parts of myself. I'm not listening to parts of myself. And therefore, it's impossible for me to fully listen to others and for others to fully listen to me. And so that's really been a big key factor for me, is like starting to realize that everything actually has complete neutrality. Everything. And we are the ones who assign positive or negative or good or bad meanings to everything, including thoughts, including words, including, you know, situations and everything. And so it really determines the quality of our experience. Yeah, like how we look at that stuff. And so when we love things, regardless, when we are looking at a person and they're talking to us, and even if they are saying the most revolting thing that you can't even begin to comprehend or fathom because it is just so absolutely horrendous, the more that you are just accepting the fact that they are saying that, and they are their own creator and creation, and they are clearly, it's all happening for a reason, seeing the divinity in all of it and accepting it and being loving and feeling that love going from your heart to theirs, even if they're talking about, like I'm saying, like really bad stuff, like you just uncomfortable, you just don't want to be around it. If you just acknowledge it and accept it, you don't have to agree with it, you don't have to be like, yeah, go do whatever terrible thing you're talking about or whatever, but if you at least have that feeling and you send that out from your own heart to theirs, there's such a huge impact in that. And I've had this happen numerous times recently, where I've been in situations, in interactions where people that I've been speaking with have been talking about things that have been like not okay with me. Not okay at all. But like, I mean, they were talking about like wishing terrible things upon others. And they're looking me in the eyes, and I had to like just have that sort of mentality, like, I love you for everything you're saying. I love you for everything that you are. Feeling that inside of me and appreciating the things that I can still appreciate about them. And that helped me come out of that conversation without feeling absolutely horrendous and like, oh my God, I can't believe I just listened to that. Being like, it's okay. You know, they're progressing through their own journey the way that they need to. And they are always acting at the consciousness level at which they're able to, and that's okay. And I'm not talking about like a hierarchical thing, but I'm just saying, like, if they're at the point where they're wishing other people harm, that's where they're at. And like, we don't have to accept, or we don't have to like, you know, condone it, but we can have that love in our heart and really just feed that to them, because ultimately the more love that we send out at things and the more love that we send to ourselves, most importantly, that's how everything gets transformed, from what I'm finding. So sorry, I got a little like long-winded there, but I did really want to make that point. You know, listening also means listening to yourself and being present with yourself.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you. And I, from both of your points of view, I have made some notes, a lot of good stuff. So, God, where do I start? I want to start by this. If you want to have a conversation with anyone, whether it is serious, not so serious, whatever it is, I believe in setting the tone. And part of setting the tone is, you know, your surrounding. You know, if this is a serious conversation, you know, how many distractions do you have going on in your place? Is the TV playing? Are you on Facebook while you're trying to do this? Or you know, are you playing a video game? You want to make sure that you give that person your undivided attention.
Oh my God, can I please interrupt you for a second, girl? Yes. Because this is so huge. This is so huge, right? If you think about it from like a quantum physics standpoint, if you desire to go there, okay, everything is frequency, everything is energy. And so if you're in an energy field of chaos, like, for lack of a better term, what you're describing, you know, distractions everywhere, TV playing, video games, all this stuff, if you're in just like this environment that is not just like centered and balanced and peaceful, and you're trying to have a legitimately serious conversation with somebody and have a heart-to-heart, and you are not giving them that. Now, maybe you're in a situation where you can't get out of that environment, but like, I've had so many times where I have been speaking with somebody trying to have these serious conversations, and it's been like, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, why is it like these short remarks? It's almost as though I'm sensing that you're maybe not listening to everything I'm saying. And even if I wouldn't say that, then I would catch on to the fact that they're clearly playing a video game or watching TV or looking at their phone or whatever. And so we have like, what, as humans, we use a small percentage of our brain anyway. And even a smaller percentage of that is attention and awareness. And even a smaller percentage of that is what you're actually giving to somebody when they're speaking. So thank you. That's like really huge. Like, I think the more that I understand about this energetic stuff, like that is such a huge point, is to put yourself in an environment that is more conducive to the conversation being at that energetic level that you would desire for it to go well, instead of just complete miscommunications happening left and right. So sorry for interrupting.
That is fine. And I want to say, bingo, that is like a major recipe for miscommunications, because you're not giving that person your undivided attention, and you are going to miss some keywords, and You're going to hear what you want to hear anyway if you're not present, whether there's distractions or not, because in your mind you're thinking of a response or whatever. You're in your emotions. And so, yeah, your surrounding is absolutely important. And I also want to talk about body language. I mean, this is something that I've learned in college. I think we all have, especially when you're going for an interview. They look at your body language, right? You know, if you're sitting there with your arms crossed like this, you look like you just don't even want to be there, right? But if we think about it energetically, when you're crossing your arms and you're crossing your legs, energy is not flowing through you. So yeah, you're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to be present. You're going to be distracted. And so there is that.
Would you also say, sorry, would
No,
you also say that like crossing your arms could be like an actual unconscious attempt at like blocking your heart chakra?
Absolutely. You can view it that way, of course, or even your solar plexus. That is your sense of, you know, self, empowerment, who you are, your ego, putting pressure on it in that way, depending on where you're crossing your arms, can certainly cause some disturbance, of course. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
okay.
Body language is important. And I know Katie talked a little bit about talking over others, and you have to. And I've been guilty of all of these things, by the way. I'm speaking from experience, and I've learned to recognize this in myself. So I feel like when people are talking over you, or you're trying to talk over people, it just sets the message out there that what they have to say is not valid or not important, even though that's not your intention. You could be coming from a place of excitement, but the other person can take it as, you know, I guess what I have to say is not valid. I guess you know more than I. You know, like that intention can be set out there. And that also is limiting others, you know, by taking over, taking control over the whole conversation. And they're not going to want to open up to you. If you want to have a clear communication, heart to heart, or whatever it is, that's part of setting the tone, is making the other person feel like they can speak their mind by you speaking your mind, making the other person feel like you respect their points of view by you stopping and listening to what they have to say, you know, waiting, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but allowing them to speak, giving them that freedom to have that open communication. And the last thing I want to talk about is upbringings. That has a lot to do with how we communicate. From my cultural background, children really had no voice. You know, I was brought up in a household where we shouldn't be heard or seen. I think that's how it's said. And so I grew up thinking I didn't have a valid point to put out there. So I was always afraid to speak up and speak my mind. And if any of the things that I mentioned before were not in place, if the other person didn't make me feel like I can speak my mind, and if people constantly talked over me, then I would stay silent, and I would never give myself a voice to speak. And so I get it. Sometimes it's a cultural thing when you grow up in that environment, but it is time to break free of that if you want to achieve effective communication, if you want your voice to be heard, and if you want to set the tone and you're the one that's, you know, calling the meeting, or this can be actually used for business meetings, not just, you know, relationship talks or whatever, just to have that confidence, you know, and give the respect to the other person so that you can have the respect back when it's time for you to speak, and you can actually have a healthy conversation without you bringing your ego and your emotions forward. I feel like a lot of people feel attacked in certain conversations when emotions take over, when people are constantly talking over them and not letting them speak their mind, when they feel triggered. All that comes from your body language and how you handle the conversation. And so, I feel like I talked forever, but I do want to segue to the lack of communication, why we run away from having certain conversations, and all of us have dealt with that. And I've been on both parts of the issue where I didn't want to be confrontational, and I didn't want to have certain conversations with certain people, and that has left the other person feeling like, what happened to her? What did I do? You know, made him feel bad. And then they were left to like, whatever, insinuate, you know, what could have happened, the should have, could have, what happened. And I never gave them that clarity, and vice versa. It has happened to me. So it's an awful, awful feeling when you do that. And part of the reason why I have done it is because the issue was too like emotional, and I didn't know. I just didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to speak my mind about certain things, and that's why it's important for you to practice, even like work on your throat chakra and your solar plexus, your self-empowerment and your freedom to speak whatever is on your mind in a very effective, loving way, so it's not causing conflict. But I'm sure you guys have a different perspective on this, so I'm going to pass it to one of you.
Okay, sure. Gosh, there's so many things that I can say about those topics. So just running off the tail end of what you just said, Adey, I personally, it's hard for me to even properly emphasize the difference it's made in my own personal life to finally speak my own truth. In multiple occasions, I've had big life-changing multiple occasions where I had put myself in a situation where I was afraid, perhaps, of what they might think or say or do in response to me speaking my truth. And so I, in some of these situations, created like a very hard situation for myself where I was actually, okay, I'll use an example that I've used before, and I think this is a very valid example. When I was growing up as a teenager and I started to discover that I was not straight, I kept it hidden from my parents. You know, I was afraid of coming out of the closet. And I created this entire fear-based, worst-case scenario reality in my head of, oh my God, the world is going to shatter into pieces once my parents find out who I really am deep down in my true heart. Which, for people who know my parents, they'd be like, what? You have incredibly loving, amazing, splendiferous parents. Why would you think that? But it was from this place of fear and worry and anxiety and doubt. And I went for a decade of actually living a double life with them, where I actually was a different person around them than I was just naturally being myself, because I was so afraid of what they might think. And the lies. I had to tell so many lies to keep up that double life, and it felt absolutely horrendous. And I gave myself anxiety and depression and blah, 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 because I was suppressing my own truth. And I had this absolute fear about speaking it because I didn't know. It was the fear of the unknown. That's all it was, the fear of the unknown. So I just wanted to say, in terms of speaking your own truth, if you don't, it's going to just add more blocks in the road for you. I really think that's what it comes down to. You are creating a path at which there's more roadblocks, there's more issues, because you're not being fully authentic with yourself or with others. And there's so much freedom, like I said, there's so much freedom. You feel like you've sprouted wings and jumped and been able to fly away once you actually just let the stuff be said. And sometimes we have to say things that are not very pleasant, but there are always ways to say them in a loving way. And if we use more of our heart for that communication if we really tap into ourselves and be like, okay, I'm going to call upon my like most innermost essence to come through and say these words from my heart and soul that have nothing to do with my physical human mind that, you know, can throw all the kinks in the gears. I think that it's really important to be yourself and be comfortable with yourself. And if you're not, start to love the things, start to be grateful for the things that you have, start to be grateful for the things that you like about yourself. And you don't have to like yourself, but you do have to love yourself. And that's the confusing part. And I think that that comes down to really like, we always have this feeling of like, I can be a better person. I know that I could do X, Y, Z differently and I can be a better person. Well, that's our innermost essence saying, yeah, like later on in your lifetime, that's a future reality that you can tap into and you can experience in this consciousness if you want to, and you will. And things are just going to play out and you're going to continue to evolve to get to that point. And we don't have to tap into those future timelines and then beat ourselves up and say, oh, I am not that future timeline right now. I'm not that future person that I'm feeling that I will be. So why don't I just take a fist to my own face and, you know, make it fun? So like, it's just so fascinating learning more about this and seeing like if we love and accept everything where we're at right now, it's so much easier. Even if we don't like where we're at, if we love and accept it and know that it's happening for a higher purpose, it's so much easier to see that in other people. And when it comes to communicating with other people, it makes conversations, I'm finding, a whole lot easier to have that sort of mentality. So there's more things that I will touch on later coming back. Luckily, I'm also writing a few notes here, keeping track of everything. Yeah. So, but I think Katie wants to maybe talk next.
So you both have been touching on a lot of really good things. Where to start? I wrote down some things too. So I'll probably go back to a couple of things that you guys talked about and then like skip around a little bit. But I definitely have had issues with like walking away from certain conversations or just not wanting confrontation. That was another big parallel that I've had with communication, where so aside from over communicating, also under communicating. And for me, the best ways that I found that when I've come to a situation of feeling like intimidated about a conversation that I know that I have to have, is that I like to connect to source. I like to shoot up a prayer or a meditation and just ask for the words, because sometimes those words are better than the words that I know that I would come up with. Actually, they are the best words. So to kind of know that the universe has got your back with it and that you don't have to take it all on you, that, you know, it doesn't have to be about you, that you can find the things that need to say the words out of love, if you will, I think as Bree said, so that you don't come across the wrong way. And a lot of that goes back to, love is the highest vibration. Everything goes back to your intent. So what's your intention with the conversation that you're having? For me, I like to think about that, where am I leading things? If I don't want to be misleading, I work on being very clear with what my intent is. And then that also leads into, for me, I've been getting much, much better at it recently, but setting boundaries for myself. And that goes into play with I used to have a lot of emotional dishonesty with myself. And so I really had to dig in deep and figure out things that were true to me and what I really felt about. Some people tried to, I don't know about other people, but I used to try to ignore my emotions about certain things, or I didn't want to look at it. And that just comes to, you know, self-awareness and working with yourself and figuring out what are these things that are important to me. And then you're able to set up healthy boundaries because you know the things that are important for yourself. Like I said, had a big problem with that. And now I've been able to, you know, with my connection to source and with prayer and meditation and all that, I've been able to understand, dig within myself, figure out what's important to me, set up these healthy boundaries, have clear communication with people. And even when it's the hard stuff, having clear communication with things like that. And I think that there's a balance too between, you know, it's important. I agree with what Adey was talking about earlier about you don't really want to speak out of emotion because then you just, things come across the wrong way, it seems in my experience. So there's this proper balance between walking away and centering yourself, but then also coming back and fulfilling that you're part of the clear communication with that. And also being clear about when you need to walk away, saying something about that, even saying like, you know, hey, I really appreciate this conversation. I am getting a little bit emotional. Just maybe be very blunt and very honest. And I really need to pull back and take some time for myself so that I can come back and into this with a clear head and a clear mind. That way you can give your full self. And honestly, I think that most people, you know, if they're in a state of, you know, if you're trying to be aware, you're reflecting that. So other people are going to be trying to be aware as well. And I think that somebody would appreciate and respect the fact that you're being so honest with them and so authentic with yourself and saying that you need this time and that you want to properly be present for the conversation and you want to have the right words to say. I think that could be respected. You know, I would respect someone that would say that to me. I would honor that. Absolutely. And then I also wrote something about the body language thing too. You know, it's really interesting because there was a lot of times in my life that I was just like with the interrupting thing that I was unaware that I was even doing it. It was brought to my attention. So I think it's really good that we're covering all of these things because even bringing it into the realm of awareness for other people to start recognizing, start to check your own body awareness or your body language. I had to do that for me. Like, okay, so I'm going to do a mental checklist right now. What's my body language like? What kind of thoughts do I have? Then you know you can have that emotional honesty with yourself. Where are you at with things? That's what works for me, you know, being able to give a little checklist of where's my body at, where's my mind at, and then I kind of know emotionally where I'm at with things. So that's a good gauge, if you will. Yeah, I think that those are pretty much the notes that I wrote. But like for me, like I said, 100% prayer and meditation, that really helps me to recenter myself along with the breath awareness to be able to be in a good place for that proper communication.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So I kind of want to take it to honest communication and why we tell lies. Mostly we tell lies to our friends or significant others or parents or whoever because of how they're going to react to whatever it is we have to tell them, whatever it is that we did. And if you want to have that open heart, honest communication and you want to clarify everything that you've been foggy about, you also have to set that tone. It takes two people to lie to each other. You may not have known it, but you know you've been limiting this other person so much they feel like they can't clearly communicate to you or tell you what's in their heart. And it could be vice versa too. The other person has been, you know, absent or limiting you so much that you're not able to freely express yourself. So again, set that tone. If you have to be the first person to honestly communicate your feelings without being taken over by your emotions, without pointing the finger at anybody else and saying, you know, because of this, I did that. Just avoid all of that and just clearly state what it is that you want to say or communicate, and that will leave it open for the other person to do the same. That's how we achieve, you know, an honest communication. And also be ready to communicate. I think Katie and both Bree have touched on this. Make sure you're in a good place to communicate. Make sure that whatever it is that you're going to talk about, that is not going to bring you to an unconsciousness level. And pain body. This is a term that I've learned from Eckhart Tolle. We get taken over by the pain body, which essentially is from the ego. And it happens so quickly. You know what I mean? We get triggered and it happens, and you're not going to be able to stop it. And so when either you or the other person is experiencing that, and like Katie said, it's okay to walk away, or it's okay to let the other person know, you know, this is how the conversation is going. I don't feel comfortable, and yeah, let's just do this another day. And also boundaries. I want to touch on boundaries. This is something I've experienced as of late from work. I think everyone knows one person that just has a dry sense of humor, or very sarcastic, and they might say something, you know, with the intention of like joking around that may trigger you or hurt you. But they, you know, they're joking around, but it could be taken the wrong way. And I had to let this person know, like, listen, don't talk to me that way. I know you mean well, but this is how it makes me feel. And I've never been able to do that before, but it's like I've been, you know, speaking my heart and speaking my truth lately. And I can't tell you how effective it is, because once I told her that, she completely felt bad. I know that that wasn't her intention. And she told me, you know, other people have told me that they don't know when I'm joking and when I'm not. And I know this is an issue, and thank you so much. And yes, now I know what your trigger is, and I will not do that. You know, it's not like you're asking somebody to change. You're just letting that person know, like, their behavior, the way they're behaving towards you, is not acceptable to you. And that is okay. You don't have to be afraid to speak your truth. What else did I want to talk about? I know I wrote down interviews. Oh, yes. This can also go for when you're going for interviews, or when you're having an honest communication. Like Bree and both Katie have said, it's important that your heart is in it, you know, and I have experienced this where I go to interviews and my heart isn't totally in it, because this isn't the type of position or a job that I want to interview for. And sometimes I'm just going on these interviews to sharpen my skills, and yeah, that happens. But when your heart isn't in it, you look weak, you know, you're nervous, you have clammy hands, and you don't know what you're saying. You start stuttering and you start making stuff up, you know, because your heart is not in it, and you'll start self-sabotaging yourself. And same thing with these open heart-to-heart conversations, or any type of conversation, really. If your heart isn't in it, you're going completely out of the logical mind, and our mind is so colorful sometimes. It will create these scenarios that aren't even real, and the person you're speaking with is saying one thing, but your mind is creating a total different scenario based off of maybe one keyword, and you end up missing the whole conversation, and you're either going to be left misled or upset or whatever, you know what I mean? You're not present enough. And so yeah, speaking from the heart and communicating from the heart will omit all of that, you know? And that's why it's important for you to be in a good place before you have these important conversations, whatever it is. If it's a business meeting, or like I've mentioned, heart-to-heart conversations. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know if Bree, if you want to say anything.
Yes, there we go. Sorry, hotkey issue. Yeah, I fully agree, and I had to laugh when you're talking about interviews when your heart isn't in it, because, whoo boy, I have some interviews I've gone to where, you know, I was at that point in my life where it's like desperation, like thinking I need this job to survive, and even though it's the opposite of what I wanted to do, and going to the interview and being like, yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, I'm totally into whatever this is. And the people are like, X, you know, because I mean, they feel it. We feel, we can sense so much more than we are aware of in this beautiful realm that we're co-creating together. And I think that this is a perfect point to bring up telepathy, because telepathy and psychic ability. Okay, so back up for a second. We as human beings are absolutely incredible creations of awesomeness. We have so many abilities. We have so many things that we can do, and we have so much in our toolbox that has not been properly explained, educated. Some of it has been purposely suppressed in history and blah, blah, blah. You can go into all that, but none of that stuff matters, because now we're at a point, again, collectively, where we can start to finally get back into the swing of understanding who and what we truly are as a race. And I think that psychic abilities and telepathy and all those sort of things are huge factors in that. And as we are going through all of these incredible energetic changes, as the Schumann resonance of the Earth's own natural frequency continues to rise, we are seeing incredible things happening in the world and happening in ourselves. Because what's happening is the frequency of the Earth is rising, the frequency of all life on Earth and everything has to rise with it, otherwise it can't exist here. And we're getting to a point where the frequency rising, and then the sun is playing into all of this, because we've created such an incredible scenario for ourselves to go through this awakening and ascension, planetary ascension together. And I think that this is huge as far as like the sun's rays helping activate our dormant DNA that the scientists have said, oh, we're mostly junk DNA. Yeah, no, it's not junk. It's actually like our true amazing nature that is being activated. And so we are seeing more and more people. I mean, the kids coming in now, the kids that are this new wave of kids, holy cow, they are definitely, their DNA is a lot more activated, and like their consciousness level is a lot higher than previous generations, and it's going to keep happening that way. It's ramping up, man. It's super exciting. And so a lot of this comes into like telepathy and telepathy in particular, and psychic abilities. When you're having a conversation with somebody, you're having a legitimate, because we have energetic cords. You can think of them as like cords or like a tunnel. Like there's a tunnel, and we're energetically connecting to the things that we're interacting with, because that's how you interact. It has to be an energy exchange, right? I mean, it's not like whatever. So like, especially with people, you are legitimately creating an energetic cord. And this cord is, again, everything is neutral. All energy is just neutral, but it depends on how you're perceiving everything. And so with these energy, this is like a heart-to-heart connection I'm talking about. And actually, like, well, maybe I'll go back to that, or ask one of you to maybe elaborate on that, if you can say anything more about that connection, that actual tunnel between people that happens when you connect with them, if you know anything more about that. But I'm bringing this up because when we're talking to somebody, information is literally passing through this tunnel, this invisible tunnel that we can't see with our human eyeballs. And this is how, as far as I understand, this is also how telepathy works. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm still trying to understand all this.
You're right on the ball.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So like, there's an actual tunnel, and like, when we're talking to somebody using our words, we're materializing energy. We're manifesting it into a physical vibration of actual sound that we can hear and sense and know, that comes out in a whole bunch of different sounds that we construe as language, or whatever you're talking in, I guess. Sometimes you don't have to use language to talk. We're talking about body language and all this stuff. There's all different sorts of ways to communicate.
Yeah, there's filters, I think is what you're trying to say, right? Our thoughts are materializing through our filters into vibration, which is words, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. And so when you're materializing that energy, like you might be saying one thing, but in your head, you are thinking and intending something completely different. And I'm bringing all of this up because people can sense it, and they can sense it a lot more than they know and a lot more than we know. And perhaps they might ignore it. They might be in denial. They might actually not be as energetically sensitive as you are, or whatever the case may be. But I think this is a really huge factor because when we're communicating in this interpersonal communication, we are actually able to pick up on the other person's thoughts and vice versa, and we don't even know it. We're not even aware. And it might not be an actual thought, it might be energy. This has happened to me before, where I've been talking to people, and I have gotten more energetically sensitive recently. And sometimes, like, I'm talking to somebody and they're talking to me about something that's like blah, 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 monotonous, but I can feel like sensations in my body that are telling me that their mind and their intention is not where what they're saying. It's actually somewhere completely different. And later on, sometimes I'll kind of out them on that, or I'll try to like ask, like kind of go down that road a little bit, and sure enough, that is the case. So the same goes for like any sort of communication with somebody. Like, you have to be authentic. You always have to be authentic, because if you're not authentic with them, they can't be authentic with you. If you're not authentic with yourself, it creates a whole lot of hodgepodge in your own external reality. So I think telepathy is like a huge part of this, because we are, as a race, we are telepathic. Our telepathy is definitely increasing. It's definitely ramping up. And, you know, it ties back into the whole collective consciousness thing and everything. And we have to, I think, really start to be more aware of our own thoughts, and with talking with other people, the intention can be sensed a lot more now than it used to be able to, and it's going to continue to go that route the more as things ramp up and frequencies rise, and we're all having all this activation, all this incredible stuff happen to us. We're literally evolving as a race, as a planet. We're evolving. And so you know, the same goes with psychic abilities, psychic senses. People are tapping into this stuff more. They're realizing, oh wait, you know, I had this whatever it may be, clairvoyant experience that ended up coming true, or whatever it may be. And so, you know, we're going into the new earth. We are in the new earth already, and we have to act as though we are too. We have to live that out. And, you know, for communication, this is absolutely huge, because one thing I've learned being involved in these spiritual communities online, and just talking to light workers in general, you know, it sounds as though telepathy is going to be kind of the next huge step in our human evolution. And whatever, you know, time frame people want to say, some 100 years, 150 years, who cares, because that's all projecting in the future. But it is going to be a thing. Like, as races advance, it sounds as though they just naturally go to that telepathic route. And when as a civilization, you're telepathic, like, all lying and deceit and all that stuff, and like bad intentions trying to be construed through different words, does not work out. So we have to shift out of that now, or we're going to cause problems for ourselves and everybody else in the future. So yeah, it's time to put our big girl and boy pants and panties on and realize, like, we got to treat this stuff seriously, because it's with our thought, with our words, we are very much creating. I mean, when we're materializing this energy into a vocal tone that has a certain meaning, a certain frequency, you know, that is helping to create, for us to create our own reality. And like, what do you want to create? You know, so where do you want to put your focus? And that especially goes with conversations, with topics, you know, with what you're talking about. How do you want to say things? If somebody's being super negative at you and complaining, do you want to feed into their complaining and their negativity and be like, and just feed it a whole bunch of, you know, porridge so that it's able to continue bubbling up? Or do you want to try to flip it? Because that's a point at which you're choosing what you want to accept and what you want to put your focus on. So very important stuff.
Beautiful. I have a lot to say, but before I do, Katie, do you have anything to add at the moment?
The only thing that I wanted to add is I feel the times that I've been really, like, that I've ever lied or been dishonest in a communication situation, it definitely always comes back to fear, like fear of what other people think, fear of, I don't know, you know, there's just been a lot of things, but that's definitely always what it comes back to for me. But, you know, fear is a low vibration. And when you're choosing a different vibration from that, like a vibration of love or the vibration of just going into it with honesty of clear communication, or, you know, taking that time to meditate or pull back and really recenter yourself, then you can, for me, like, I found I can work through those feelings of fear, and I don't have to let the fear run my life, because, you know, I realized, especially recently, that I allowed fear to run my life a lot of the time. And that's what a lot of the cause of my miscommunication or my, or, you know, just, yeah, my miscommunication stemmed from, was these feelings of fear or inadequacy, which is a form of fear. So really kind of working on self and working through that and bringing awareness to those types of things, which is being emotionally honest with yourself, what I was talking about before. You know, if you can come to this point of emotional honesty with yourself and work through those fears, then that can help with better communication as well.
Indeed. Boy, I have a lot of notes. Okay, so I'm going to start. God, I think, Bree, you may have talked about the new generation, how they are born pretty much almost awake. You know, they have all of these abilities. And this is why it's important that we listen to our children. And I'm not saying a lot of people don't, but I know certain cultures totally like disregard anything a child has to say. But you might be surprised, you know, what you can learn from these children. And you also want to create that environment for your kids to be able to express and communicate themselves freely and in an honest way. You know, it starts at that age, you know, from the minute they start talking. And I want to talk about telepathy and the filters that we have and our psychic abilities. Yes, we do all have them. And you can access it at any point, you know. You just have to step out of your ego. That is a major filter. And believe in yourself. You know what I mean? The minute you start doubting the information is when you will not say it, or when you second guess yourself and get it wrong, especially if you're doing psychic work. That's what I had to learn, is to stop doubting it. Stop doubting it. And I don't know where Katie is, but I believe, maybe she can correct me if I'm wrong, but we store a lot of our memories that are associated with words, with music, with whatever, in our subconscious mind. And I believe that is the filter that our thoughts go through and materialize into words at times. And this is where you can miscommunicate your true intentions, because they are going through those filters. And this is why, especially in telepathy, or if you're communicating honestly, for you, it's important for you to step out of your ego. That way, it's not going through any filter that is associated with anything. Oh boy, I think my cats are going crazy. And so, yeah, it's important to step out of your ego for that purpose. Katie, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was going to say you're right on point with that. The subconscious stores a lot of those things, and tapping into that subconscious. You know, I actually I wanted to rewire certain parts of my subconscious, so I worked with hypnosis and doing different things that I could actually get to that level there, because sometimes it's really difficult to change a belief or a program or a pattern that's dug way down in your subconscious. But that, you know, and I feel like also to what you just said before about listening to yourself, that's our intuition. And for so long, intuition has been suppressed. And so it's really important that I'm actually really working with this a lot right now so that I can tap into a lot of those different psychic abilities. But learning to trust myself, really learning to understand that when I'm getting like warning signs about different things, that this is definitely, you know, my intuition and it's telling me something. And, you know, back in the day when you're in a situation, I mean, think about with animals too, you know, so like you were given warning signs. Your body actually physically gives you warning signs about things when you're in a situation that's coming up of stress or of discomfort. You know, that's why we sweat. That's why, you know, some people like headaches. I don't know. There's so many different signs that your like physical body will give you. And that's part of tapping into that intuition and understanding your body and how your body works with your intuition. And that can be part of helping you figure out what that emotional honesty is. So I'm really working right now on trusting my intuition, and that the certain thoughts that come up are for a reason, and different things like that. So yeah, I'm done. I'll let you keep going.
No, thank you for that. And I'm glad you confirmed that. It's been a while since I took psychology, so I had to like confirm. But yeah, as far as psychic abilities, the way that I do my readings and how I connect is really simple. You know, I clear my area, of course, I sage, and I intend, you know, I ask Source to help me stay out of this reading. You know, I want to be a clear channel and allow the information to just flow through me, free of my judgments and emotions. And that is what sets the tone, and that is what allows me to step out of my ego and be a clear channel. Because I truly believe that Source is going to help me do this. And then I just focus on the person's name, you know, if they're not in front of me, and the information. Once I do that and I say, what do you have for me? The information completely flows. I mean, I just start speaking. It's not like they're my thoughts, because they don't come to me as thoughts. I just speak the words because they're not going through any filters. I don't have time to think about it or second guess it. You know what I mean? Word comes to mind and I say it. Done. Sometimes it's a vision that I see. They show me pictures or it's almost like a film that I'm watching. You know, they communicate with pictures sometimes, and I don't have time to analyze the picture. I'll just describe it. That's how it works. You know, the minute you start analyzing what you're seeing and second guessing it, you're interfering with that information. You know, it's going through your subconscious, and you're going to put your thoughts and emotions into that message, you know. And so don't like sit there and say, is this really what I'm hearing? Is this really what's coming to me? You just say it, because once you say it, you know, without even thinking about it, you know that you're not interfering with it. That's what I want to say about psychic abilities. And then I want to talk about fear, because I know Katie talked about it a little bit, why we tend to tell lies. You know, we're afraid of hurting the other party and or disappointing the other party or whatever it is. It also speaks to our insecurities too. Sometimes we tell lies because maybe we're the ones that are doing the wrong thing, and we're assuming the other person is also, and we attack them. I'm sure everyone has dealt with that. It could have been vice versa too. Someone is always like telling you, you know, why are you doing this? This could be in relationships and friendships. You know, they just feel like you're doing something wrong because we pick up each other's energy, and your insecurity will arise and you'll tell a lie, you know, because you're operating out of fear. And it's important to be honest. And I also want to talk about perception. We kind of talked about this earlier in the beginning, why it is important to truly listen when you're having a conversation, because you're getting an idea of the other person's point of view of the event. Let's say that you're talking about something that happened earlier, you know, and you have your own view on it, and the other person has their view of what happened. And if you truly are listening to each other, you're understanding, you know, your role in that whole event, and hopefully they're listening and they're understanding their role, and you get to see a different point of view, because like we said, although you did not intend to do or say the things that you've done, because again, it's going through our filters, and whatever thoughts come through us may come out differently, and it can be taken the wrong way. It's important to listen to the other person to see how they took it, because in your mind you're thinking, I am totally not wrong in this. You know, I said what I wanted to say, and this is how I felt. But sometimes the way that you say it may not have been executed in the way that you truly intended to say it, if that makes sense. And a good example of that is what happened with me and that girl at work. You know, in her mind, she's joking, but she's saying things that are triggering me, that are not so nice, because, you know, this is how she is. And I know she means well, and that's part of the telepathy and the connection that we have with each other. I know she didn't mean it, but I still got triggered. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I had to bring it up to her and let her know. So that's another thing, is to give the other person a chance to speak, so you know what their point of view is. And that is all I have to say for now. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add.
On like the tail end of that, I'm gonna use the word freedom again. As far as if somebody and the way that they speak to you and interact with you and everything makes you feel a certain way, that you were like, whoa, hold up, we need to clarify this. We need to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and I feel like you really need to know how I feel here, because you clearly are just on your own page, let's just say. If we don't stand up for ourselves in that way, we're putting ourselves in just deeper down. We're digging the hole deeper for ourselves. And that goes with any situation. You know, you're talking about a work experience, a work relationship. There's all sorts of interactions. There's all sorts of ways in which this can happen. When you lay out how it really is, when it is extremely important. Now, I mean balance and everything, right? Like, I don't mean that you should always be the policing force, and in every conversation be like, well, I just need you to know that the way that blah, blah, blah is making me feel this. And also, I need you to know that you said this and it made me feel this way. And you said this. No. But like, if it's something you really need to get off your chest, just get it off your chest. Just say it. Just give yourself that freedom. Give yourself that luxury of being able to speak your truth and let them know where you're at, because they might not. There's a good chance they don't. And, you know, we all are literally living in our own separate realities. Yet we're co-creating this amazing realm here, but we are literally experiencing things from our own separate perspectives always. And we have to take that into account when we're dealing with and interacting with people. And on this topic of like freedom in communication, freedom in speaking your mind, freedom in letting everyone understand where you're at if it's most important. I also just wanted to touch on this whole thing about like intention with speaking. I've found for myself, when I lay out my intention, because like in the past, I've been a pretty passive person, you know, I've been pretty much like, because I was not in my own power. I was not standing in my power. I was like, no, let me try to be the little ant on the floor and see how that works out for me. And I had that, and it worked out great. And well, maybe not so much, but like it was an experience, right? There were so many times I could think back to where I did not clearly state my intention for whatever it was. And I was just, I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe hoping that at some point they would just figure it out. Like they're just gonna bing, oh, that's what they're thinking. Now, like, we have to be reasonable about this stuff, because as much as I'm talking about how we're telepathic and we have these psychic abilities and everything that we can tap into, I'm not saying that you can sit there and look at somebody and just hear their thoughts and everything they're thinking. We're going to get to that point at some point as a civilization down the line, and some people might already be there, but like on a generalized level, I don't know if we can say we're there as a race yet. So like, people cannot read your mind as far as if there's something that you need to say, that you need to lay out, that you need to let people know, and you're hoping, oh, maybe they'll figure it out later. Oh, well, maybe later on I can just clarify that. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe I can like ask my friend to make it clear to them. Like, no. Just say it. Just lay it out there, because situations recently, you know, I've had that sort of, I've been interacting with people, and there's like that old self of mine, like that, you know, the little, just doubting myself and everything, that's been like, oh no, I shouldn't state this intention that way because maybe I'll hurt their feelings, or, you know, maybe they'll think poorly of me, and maybe I can just do it later and totally screw up this entire thing. And I'm like, no, I clearly can feel that I need to put this out there. I need to make this known and understood. And by stating your intention, at least for me, it has made so much more smooth sailing than ever before, because I'm being honest with myself, I'm being honest with them, laying everything out on the table. No hidden little, you know, the small print that, you know, when you're not being authentic and not really speaking what's truly on your mind, on your heart, then things get jumbled and convoluted, and it can be tough for things to continue on a harmonious path, because you're basically taking bricks and being like, let me put this in front of my tires and see how it feels. So yeah, there's so much, it comes down to freedom. It comes down to that feeling of freedom, and we can give ourselves that feeling of freedom and give other people the permission to be free for themselves, to speak their own truth, by us acting that own way, by us exuding that own confidence and that own self-awareness and that own self-love, so that we're able to show people, yeah, like, well, this is who I am, and you know, I'm not going to put up with you treating me that way, or no, that's not the idea that I had in mind, and I'm going to be straightforward with you. I'm not okay with that. You know, and just saying it, and that's okay. It's beautiful. It's the best thing for you. You are so much in that state of self-empowerment and self-love when you're respecting yourself enough to stand up for yourself, because if you don't stand up for yourself, who will? Right?
I wanted to talk about empowering others. I don't know how you guys feel about people advocating for others. You know, if there is someone in your group that is, you know, a bit shy, and they don't stand up for themselves, and they don't speak up for themselves, I think it's absolutely wrong for you to fight their battle. I think it's absolutely wrong for you to speak for them. What I believe is you become that example, you know. You speak for yourself, you stand up for yourself, and you are that example for them, and they will follow, you know, and do the same for themselves. I feel like it's the opposite effect when you start advocating for others and fighting their battles for them. You're creating a crutch, and they're going to rely on you to do that for them, and it's not even in full awareness, you know. And so that's one thing.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, please, because I kind of lost my train of thought.
I just had a memory come back to me of when I was a kid, and my friend very much was like very timid and shy, and she really didn't like interacting with people, and she really didn't like herself or love herself, and she was extremely self-conscious, especially when it came to interacting. And there were so many times where she would like actually say, hey, when we go to this outing, or hey, when we're around these people, or hey, when we're doing this, could you just speak for me, basically. Like she would literally say, like, yeah, like the less I say the better, so if you could just go ahead and take the reins, and just like, there were times where, I mean, she asked me to call up places to order food for her, to book appointments for her. Now we were young, so I don't know if we were actually booking appointments, but like I distinctly remember calling people and doing these things for her, thinking that I was helping her out, because she was coming to me like, well, please, you know, I would really feel a lot more comfortable like if you would do this for me, because, you know, it's just, that's just where my comfort zone is at. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, you know, whatever, I don't care, like, you know, if you feel better that way, I don't really care, sure, I'll do that for you. Not thinking that there was anything wrong with it. And it's not that there was anything wrong with it per se, because right, wrong, okay, yeah, but can't really say that that was anything but enabling her own lack of confidence and lack of self-empowerment and lack of self-love and lack of standing up for herself and speaking her truth and everything. And it did not help her growth and development on her own path by me being like, oh yeah, sure, you know, I'll call these people for you and talk to them. I'll speak to whoever because you are afraid of that confrontation. Like, but isn't it easier for us to do that on behalf of other people when it has to do with us? It's like, okay, that confrontation is, well, and it also depends on your personality type and energetic makeup and blah, 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 blah. But at least for myself, yeah, I've definitely not liked confrontation. But if I was doing it on behalf of somebody else, I found it a lot easier. Which is funny. It's kind of like cleaning houses. I'm like, yeah, I'll help you clean your house. But when it came to my house, so getting much better with that. But it's just, it's funny when you look at it that way. So I just wanted to add that in there, that, yeah, I guess it would be basically enabling from how you had worded that, Adey. So thank you.
Totally. And I am speaking from experience, because I can't believe I'm actually admitting this, but back in high school, I was so non-confrontational. I would have my best friend, God, break up with guys for me because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But, you know, there came a point in time when, you know, I just couldn't rely on her to do that anymore. You know, she moved out east, and at the time I was still in San Diego, and I didn't have her to do that for me anymore. So like, now it was left up to me, and I just started like avoiding and running away and just never ever calling them back. I was one of those people, and it was done to me also, but it took like years for me to have that self-love and self-confidence to speak my truth. And it does have to do with my background and how I grew up, you know, and also it's a part of who I am. I'd never ever want to hurt anyone. But back then I didn't realize what I was actually doing and avoiding and hurting people was actually hurting them, you know. Who would want to hear from somebody else that, you know, they don't want to date you anymore? Like, that's like the worst thing in the world. But I didn't understand it, you know what I mean? It was, my intentions were not like to hurt somebody in such a deep way. That actually hurts more than you telling them yourself, you know what I mean? Or using that, it's not you, it's me, I've done that too, when in fact, I mean, it could have been me, but when in fact, half the time it was the other person, you know what I mean? And how else are they going to learn about themselves? You know, what it is that they did that could have caused this to happen. You know what I mean? It's good to give them that perspective. And I've had, you know, certain guys ask me, okay, what is it that I did? And I didn't feel comfortable enough to tell them, you know, like, well, this is what you did and this is what I didn't like. So anyway, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, I wasn't even trying to like cut in. I can't get my mouse to work, so my microphone's like undone. I might not even be able to like turn it back on.
If you press the
anyway.
hotkey Control D, if you have a PC, it might work.
Boom, we in there like swimwear. Okay,
yeah.
So Bree, you can come and clean my house whenever you want. Just let you know.
Okay, girl. Be there tomorrow.
Word, I will take you up on it. So yeah, I would agree with both of you. I think that it's completely enabling to, you know, to try to stick up for somebody else, and really, like, we should be focused on ourselves anyway. I read a really good article about setting boundaries, and one of the lines in it, it was my favorite line in the whole thing. It said, I would have never known how to set healthy boundaries for myself unless I had seen someone do it for their self. And that's the truth for me. Like, I learned how to set healthy boundaries because, you know, starting to come into my awareness and to be awakened, you know, I would see somebody set a boundary for themselves and I would be like, oh, wow. So that was like completely appropriate and respectable that they did that for themselves. Like, awesome. And it started to gradually teach me how to be able to do this for myself. You know, and I feel like I grew up, you know, and I think a lot has to do with personality as well, but yeah, environment has a lot to do with too. I'm a believer in the theory of a socio-cultural, genetic, and, you know, combination of everything that kind of makes up what you are. So as far as environmentals as well, as far as environment goes, in my environment, there was like absolutely no boundaries with anything. And so it was kind of like a free-for-all. And it was funny because, like I was saying earlier about, you know, I think it's funny how the universe or how source kind of puts certain people in your life to be a reflection that you kind of need to see of yourself. Because the universe put extremely boundary setting people in my life. And I was just like, what? Like, so this is a thing? And I kind of had to adjust and realize, okay, not only is it a thing, but I actually have boundaries for myself that I would enjoy. And so, yeah, like, you know, stand up for your own, and I covered like a couple different things, but standing up for your own things, I think, is really important, because when you're just kind of focusing on yourself and you're doing what you need to, you can be that example to the other people that maybe aren't so good at it. And honestly, that's maybe a lesson that they have to learn. If they're not able to stand up for themselves, and like you said, it kind of, it gives a crutch for them to lean on. I think both of you were kind of saying, it's like, they're never going to learn because they're comfortable, and we don't grow when we're in comfort. I don't grow when I'm in comfort. I become complacent and, you know, just kind of satisfied with where I'm at. And so, you know, I think it's important to kind of catalyze that growth. It makes us do it. I know that there are situations that I wasn't comfortable. I did the same thing all day. Instead of using people, though, I would write notes because I didn't have the balls to like go up to somebody and say exactly what I needed to say. And also, you know, just completely avoided certain situations. And then I would ask other people as well to do certain things for me. And honestly, like, so my mom like made appointments for me like forever. And it took a while for me to break out of that and be like, no, I think I got to handle this one on my own, you know, because she's still willing to do it for me. And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, please don't enable me. No, but really, like, I would be enabling myself because I'd be all for it, you know. But like, when you have that taken away from you, it kind of forces you to stick yourself in the situation where you need to grow and become independent and start to do things for yourself. And honestly, too, if you're having somebody else do these things for you, you're probably not coming off 100% with the intention and the clear communication that you want to give, because it's not coming through your eyes and your perspective. You're automatically sending it through a whole nother filter besides your own filter that's creating this extra dissonance between you and the other person or the other thing that you want to communicate through. So, yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
Absolutely. And yes, you're right. And the funny thing is, once I had this realization, you know, that I was completely wrong, it's funny how life works, but because these people ended up re-entering my life at various points, and I ended up apologizing to them. You know what I mean? Obviously, we were kids, and we've gotten over it. But you know, I felt the need to truly like clear the air and let them know, yeah, I was in the wrong. And part of conflict resolution is admitting and knowing when you are wrong. And that's also part of effective communication. And I kind of also want to talk about, and I've gone through this many times, but I've handled it like way wrong, is when you're having conversations with people or one-on-one conversations, and you just know that person is not being completely truthful to you. You know it, you feel it, because you know you're an empath, and you just feel it. The best way, well, worst way you can handle that is to corner them and ambush them and force them. You know what I mean? Force information out of them, because that creates emotions and ego and conflict, and it's going to be a toxic communication between the two of you. It's going to bring out your ego and your emotions and anger, and words are going to be said that are probably going to hurt, you know, the other person. And so I think it's important to allow that person, you know, time to conjure up the courage, maybe, whatever it is that they need to freely speak their truth. You have to be understanding of that, you know. It's not always on your own time. You don't know what the other person is going through, what battles they're fighting. They can even be like knowingly deceiving you. You don't know that, but all I know is cornering them and anger and toxic communication is not going to bring the truth forward. And you know what? You may never even hear the truth. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that and move on from that situation.
I think that's a very good point. I have had personal recent experience with this exact situation that you're describing, but if you're not going to corner them, it also depends on how long you're willing to wait. Because there's definitely an aspect of self-respect and self-love in being obviously deceived and lied to and whatever else, you know, if somebody is clearly not acting with good intentions and is trying to be deceitful about it or trying to be sneaky or whatever, and if you're at that point where you're like, okay, I know that cornering them and basically demanding to know what's actually going on, that's going to be an explosion, then, you know, finding that way that feels the best to basically say, okay, well then, if you're not going to be upfront with me, then, and see that, I wouldn't consider that to be cornering, personally. There are, and this kind of goes back to saying things from the heart instead of from the mind. If there's something serious that you really need to say and you're all afraid, like, oh no, but I don't want it to come off as, you know, like egoic or like, you know, emotional or whatever, come to that centered space, give yourself time to really think and feel, and then you have to really put your foot down in these situations, because it's basically, I mean, you can call it abuse, you can call it, you know, deceit, you whatever you want to call it for the situation it is. You also can't allow that to just continue on the way it is just because you're trying to turn a blind eye, or trying to be like, oh well, it'll all work itself out, and oh well, maybe they're gonna tell me when the time is right, you know, maybe they're gonna fess up at some point. Sometimes there has to be a bit of a how do I word this? Sometimes you have to basically open that doorway for them to be truthful with you. Lightly open it in a loving way. That's not like, when are you gonna tell me what you're doing? You know, but more like, okay, so I'm gonna take a step back here. I feel as though there are things that perhaps need to be said. And I'm just going to open the space for those things to come out if they need to, or if they're going to. Something more neutral, you know, getting yourself in that neutral space, not attacking them, not demanding anything, but just being like, I'm opening the door. If you want to bring through the truth of the matter, I fully allow you to do that, and we can take it from there. And, you know, we could be adults about this. But at the same time, you know, don't put yourself in that situation of disrespect and allow that to continue, because that is not okay. It's absolutely not okay.
No, I get what you're saying, and I do. But what I'm saying is, if whoever you're dealing with is not ready to come forward with the truth, you cannot demand that out of them. You have to respect that and give them time. And also, sometimes maybe we're not seeing the truth. Maybe whatever it is that was expressed to us, we're not willing to accept as the truth. But if you truly in your heart know that whatever it is that they told you is not true, and you feel it, then yeah, absolutely, that person is either unconscious and they're not realizing that they're not being honest, because that very well can happen when you are totally in an unconscious state, or that person is fearful. They're fearful of admitting whatever it is that they need to admit, because it may have hurt you, hurt somebody else, or hurt them, whatever it is. But if you're not getting the truth out of whoever it is you're communicating with, it's because they're not ready. They're not ready, and on so many levels, and you cannot force these things to happen. And I understand you said it's good, or you cannot allow this to happen. One thing you can do not to let this affect you is detaching from it. You know, when you emotionally attach to this thing, and you're just so zeroed in on getting the truth out of this person, and you kind of know what the truth is, but you want them to admit it and say it, you kind of lose sight of your environment, or even your actions, or even your consciousness, and you go and you attack that person, and you're not aware of it, you know, because you're letting your emotions take over you. But if you have that understanding, like, okay, I may or may not ever hear the truth from this person, you slightly detach from it, it's not affecting you. It's not going to be in your mind. And you give yourself closure. And again, you may or may not hear the truth from this person, but it does not have to affect you.
Yeah, accepting any outcome. You know,
Absolutely.
just being like, whatever happens is okay. It's going to be okay.
Absolutely.
And that neutrality is so healing.
You're not making their issue yours. You know, when we are trying to get something out of someone, we are taking on their burden. We're making their issues ours. What am I going to gain from the truth? You know, that I can't get on my own, because I already know what the truth is. You know, Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with both of you. Losing attachment to the outcome. But I also want to point out that this is a really good time to, you know, work into intuition and trusting that intuition and knowing, like, okay, you know, because we don't always have to know the outcome. We don't always have to know someone else's intentions. We don't always have to know what, you know, we don't have all the answers, and we don't have to have all the answers. But when we go with that gut feeling or that intuition, I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have been trying to communicate with somebody and I felt some sort of emotional dishonesty, but I overrode my own feelings to listen to what they had to say and trusted what they had to say over what I felt. And then it turned out that I was completely accurate about the situation. So, you know, just but those examples in my life of times that has happened has just shown me, even more how much to trust my intuition. And so that's, you know, why I'm really honing in on working on that now. And I think it's really important for each individual, you know, because there's some things too that they may not, like Adey was saying, they might not even be an awareness that they're twisting things because maybe they're being emotionally dishonest with themselves, just how I've done with myself before. So just go with your intuition, go with those gut feelings, because you may know over what they know, but it's not necessarily your job to tell them that. They have to come to their conclusions themselves. Just like I would have never listened to anybody if they were, you know, especially if I wasn't in awareness that I was being emotionally dishonest with myself, and then someone tried to point it out to me, I would probably be offended if, you know, when I was in my not so aware awakeness, not so aware awakenness, you know, it probably would have brought me to points of frustration. So I think it is important that, you know, maybe you're not necessarily going to get the answers, and then yes, to bring yourself back to center, to meditate, to pray, whatever you need to do so you're not speaking out of emotion, you're not getting worked up about a situation. I mean, we could even apply the same concept that we're talking about right now with traffic, because you know, like, other people aren't necessarily maybe aware or paying attention, and maybe you see that they completely effed up, you know what I mean, and that they're not going, they cut you off, or they didn't use their signal or whatever, you know. You can be completely aware of that, but it's probably not your job to tell them that. I mean, yes, be careful and sit in your own, you know, like, be safe with you. And we all know that other people are crazy drivers, just like we should know that other people are probably crazy communicators. So, you know, keep your guard up with what you need to. And I'm not saying like guard everything in the sense of, you know, but be safe with yourself so that you're protected in the way that you need to be. And, you know, everything ends up flowing and working out the way that it should.
I think that driving is such an awesome reflection of so many things in life. And I'm so glad you brought that up. That's so funny. Like, it's absolutely true. You know, as far as like being on the road and driving, if you're in the mentality of like victimhood, and like the world is against me and everybody hates me and everybody's trying to just screw my life up, then first of all, you're going to see that everywhere, including when you drive. And then you're going to perceive all that stuff through that lens of, oh, that person cut me off because they're deliberately trying to cut me off. And it's just so silly, because the more that we evolve our consciousness, and the more that we actually start to have that self-awareness, and then that understanding of everything else and everyone else, because we understand ourselves more. It with driving, that's such a funny analogy, because yeah, like if people are, you know, instead of looking at somebody who's, let's say, like driving 100 miles an hour, or like, you know, speeding for other people in other countries, like if somebody is speeding really, really crazily, have the thought of like, oh, maybe there's like an emergency. You know, there's a chance that like maybe there is a real legitimate emergency that they have to speed. I think we've all been in those situations where we've sped driving, and it's been because like we kind of had to, as far as what we understood, like we had to, for whatever emergency that we were dealing with. And okay, now I can go into like, we actually control time with our perception and awareness and quantum physics, and time doesn't exist, and blah, blah, blah. And okay, sure, yes, that's a factor. But as far as like how we generally all live and everything, it's all about your perception, right? And especially with other people, you know, if you perceive them as always doing the best that they can at the level that they're at, no matter what, then it makes it so much easier to just accept and be okay with how everything is working out, and then feeling that safety, because the safety doesn't come from anything external. You can't like buy something and be like, okay, I bought this thing and now I'm safe, or like have somebody in your life, oh, this person's in my life and now I'm safe. Like, the safety is always within you. Everything is always within you. And having that knowing exuding from you gives other people the permission to have the same knowing.
I do want to add, and yes, that was beautiful what you both said about road rage. It's a very real thing. Part of the reason why you are in certain situations, especially for me, wanting to hear the truth from another person, we are mirrors to each other. And this is something that I've dealt with before, but I was on the other side of it. I was the one that wasn't being truthful, that was withholding information for the other person to move on. And so you have to understand, when you are on the other side of things, you know, you already know what it's like to be the person that's not speaking their truth. So it wouldn't be fair for you to be forceful or corner them or get overly emotional. And I knew that I needed time when I was in that position to let the person know how I truly felt, whatever the truth was that they were looking for. And so I have to provide that same courtesy when I'm on the other side, you know, for the other person to do that, if there is a truth to be spoken. You know, sometimes it could be that we're just not willing to take whatever it is that they told us, you know, like this just can't be. And that's when your ego and your emotions go into play. But like Katie said, absolutely heed your intuition, because it never lets you down. The minute you start second guessing yourself is when, I don't want to say you betray yourself, but when you get foggy and confused about things because you're not listening to yourself, your body, your heart, and your soul, whatever. And so, yeah, be in tune with yourself, and like we said, absolutely detach from an outcome. Expect the unexpected, I guess, or no expectations, whatever. Anyway, I think I am done with this topic. I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
I think there's one really quick last thing I just wanted to bring up in terms of boundaries, setting boundaries. Because like when you were both talking about it, and like Katie, when you were saying, you know, how freeing it was for you, well, first of all, to have those people just synchronistically or ironically appear in your life that were clearly setting boundaries for themselves and kind of showing you that it's okay to do it for yourself, and it's actually a very healthy thing. Setting boundaries is very, I'm going to use the word again, it's freeing. It's setting boundaries is similar to intention, setting an intention, but it's more so than that, because with boundaries, you're not letting yourself, you're not compromising yourself and your own self-worth and your own just self in general. I'm thinking back to when I was a child and I had a friend who was overly clingy, and like wanted to talk to me all the time. I'm talking like we got home from school and it's like, ring me up. Hey girl, let's talk all night long. Blah, 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 blah. And okay, yes, like it's nice to have a friendship and it's good to have communication and everything, and that's awesome. But it came down to that enabling thing, because looking back at the situation, she was so uncomfortable with herself. And I also was uncomfortable with myself. And like we were kind of awkwardly creating the scenario in which we could both play out this role of like, she was clinging, I was kind of trying to run away, but then be like, oh, but it's kind of nice to have this interaction and, you know, this friendship. And so I clearly can't pull away from any of it or set any boundaries or say, yo, I need time for myself to be able to like think and breathe and eat without you talking my ear off. And like I need my own space. I see you at school, go home, I need my space. And I didn't give myself that permission, and I didn't, you know, put that boundary out there. And it became slowly over time, as you can probably imagine, not a really good situation where our friendship declined more and more and more, and it got to the point where then it actually turned toxic because, you know, I was then kind of holding a grudge and like resentment, even though I was the one who wasn't being clear and honest, and it wasn't her fault. I mean, she was just, you know, she just wanted a friend to talk to, and like I did too, but not that much. So I think that like that's like, I mean, boundaries can go all sorts of ways. You know, it doesn't just have to be like a boundary like in a relationship, or, you know, I mean, boundaries can be literally anything. If you are just putting your foot down and saying, yo, just so that we're all on the same page, this is how I would feel best having things go moving forward, and doing it in a loving way, speaking from your heart, you know, speaking from that centered point of view that like knows what's best for you. And like sometimes you might have to come to compromises with things with other people, and that's okay. Like as long as everybody is like working together to find solutions for things, and like, you know, go to that place where it's a healthy interaction, it's a healthy exchange. So I think that's probably the last point I wanted to make about, you know, just boundaries can go all sorts of ways, and it's so healthy and it's so freeing to really do that for yourself and for others. It's so, like you said, I think Katie, you mentioned the word, like it's very respectful. It is so respectful for everything to be a lot more harmonious and just like flow a lot easier. So yeah, I guess that's probably the last point I wanted to make. Just, you know, there's so many ways to make things easier for yourself and others, and come to that point of like interpersonal interactions and relationships being pleasant and being something that you look forward to if you're real with yourself and real with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is probably the last thing I'll say too, is it is truly, 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 truly important to be honest with yourself and with others and communicate your feelings, because if you don't tell them how you are feeling and you're just holding it in and you're letting it fester, then you blow up one day, you can't really say it's their fault, because they don't know whatever they're doing is bothering you. They don't know. You're just hoping that they can read your mind, and we can go back to telepathy. We cannot expect that of others. Even if you are a light worker and you do this for a living or whatever it is, you know, you can't expect that of others. And that's another thing, is the expectations, you know. Just drop the expectations and freely and clearly communicate. And that it requires you stepping out of your ego and your emotions and speaking from the heart.
And I think I just want to add on that really quickly. Like, I think when you open up in that sort of way, and when you kind of lay it out and like speak your truth, like it allows for more truth and more awesome beauty to come to the surface. It creates that safe space. And so I think like when it comes to that, you know, you're actually you're giving the other person the opportunity to then be like that as well and feel like that as well. So, you know, it's so healing on so many levels for us to just, yeah, like be real. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, girls. Katie, anything else you want to add?
I love you both so much.
Oh, I love you. This has been so healing for me. Y'all know I can't make those hearts, but you know, I'm very challenged in that way. So here's my attempt. I think that's a heart or a circle.
That is a heart. It's beautiful.
It's a heart.
You have blue nail polish, so it has like a blue center.
Oh yeah, my nail. Yeah, blue heart. There you go.
Gorgeous.
I love blue. Is my favorite.
For the throat chakra. It's a metaphor, guys.
You know
and
what?
you have blue headphones.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. I know. As much as I like blue, you would think I do speak my truth now.
Now you do.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes, that's empowering.
It is empowering. Gosh.
Yes,
That's where
thank
we're
you.
moving to. So I love you ladies as well. And thank you everybody for watching. Like, this is always so much fun. And so thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And we will see you on the next discussion. So, bye.
Much love. Namaste.